Seeing at 6 p.m., I'd like to call the January 6, 2021 regular meeting of the Kenai City Council to order. And if you are able, would you please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everybody here in person as well as online. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Gabriel.
Here.
Councilmember Nackstedt.
Here.
Vice Mayor Malloy.
Here.
Councilmember Winger. Here. Councilmember Glendenning.
Here.
Councilmember Petty.
Here.
Councilmember Askin.
Here.
Mayor Gabriel, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Before we get to agenda approval, Council, I'd like to draw your attention to a laydown you should have in front of you with requested revisions to the agenda packet. Action, add to item G3, ordinance number 3177-2021, public comment requested by the city clerk. Add to item G5, COVID-19 response, USDA Farmers to Families Food Box Program article brought forward by Vice Mayor Malloy. CARES Act Small Business Grant Timeline brought forward by the administration. And CARES Act Program Expenditure Update, also brought forward by the City Manager. Action, add to item H5, Planning and Zoning Commission, McIntyre resignation letter, requested by the City Clerk. And lastly, under additional public comment being provided in written format due to COVID-19, Nancy Lathy email regarding COVID-19 vaccinations. This is requested by the City Clerk. Pleasure, Council. Vice Mayor Malloy.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Move to approve the agenda with the requested revisions to the agenda packet listed by the mayor and requesting unanimous consent.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Next, we have the consent agenda. Councilmember Nackstedt.
I move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Is there anybody on the body that would like to amend the consent agenda at this time? Seeing none, we'll please ask the clerk, please read the consent agenda into the record.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Tonight on your consent agenda, you have approval of the meeting minutes of December 16th, 2020. You have approval of bills to be ratified, approval of purchase orders over $15,000, introduction of Ordinance 3177-2021, authorizing a shop local economic stimulus program to benefit Kenai small businesses, and award of a professional services agreement to the Kenai Chamber of Commerce and Visitor Center for administration of the program, to have a public hearing on January 20th, and introduction of ordinance number 3178-2021, accepting and appropriating a COVID CARES Act for older adults and their caregivers 2021 grant passed through the state of Alaska for Kenai Senior Center expenditures in support of its response to the COVID-19 public health emergency, with a public hearing on January 20th. And that is your consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there anybody that would like to speak to any item that is on the consent agenda at this time, which was just read in the record by the City Clerk? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to Council.
Request unanimous consent.
Thank you, Councilmember Nackstedt. Unanimous consent was requested for approval. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. Next up, we have item B, scheduled public comment. First up, we have two speakers here, or presenters here this evening. First up, we have Jodi Stuart, annual update of Project Homeless Connect. And I understand Ms. Stewart is joining us virtually, and we'll get you patched through here.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mayor Gabriel. Can you hear me?
Just barely. Okay, yeah, we're sort of still spooling up the presentation here, so.
That's fine. Just wanted to kind of do a mic check and see how the mic was going.
Okay, stand by for just a second, okay, Jodi?
Thank you.
Jody, I think
So I see the presentation up.
Okay, Jody, we're turning up the volume. Can you go ahead and speak again?
Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing.
It's still not very loud. It's worse than what's on here.
Testing, testing, testing.
Getting better.
Better, worse, good, bad, indifferent.
That's much
I think
better.
that's
Is that
good.
Okay, Tim, you okay with that? Give me a thumbs up, Jody, so I think you're good to go.
All right, so I hope you guys can hear me because now I can barely hear you.
I didn't have my mic on, so try. Is that better?
Ah, okay. Thank you. So are we good to start then?
Yes, we're good to go.
All right, thank you. So thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, for having me speak to you tonight in regards to the 2020 data from our Project Homeless Connect. So we're going to be looking at data from last year, which is how we plan for every year moving forward. But of course, as we all know, COVID-19 hit, and so things are different. And right now, I just kind of want to bring to your guys' attention that this is a decade that we've been doing this project, and it's a decade of solid work that we've been doing to address homelessness on the Kenai. Next. So I'm going to have them kind of go through this fairly quickly for those council members that are new to council and haven't seen my presentation before. Traditionally, a Project Homeless Connect is a one-day community-wide event where an individual suffering from homelessness or near homelessness will have access to housing, support, and resources. Next. There are 10 essential elements of every Project Homeless Connect. These Homeless Connects go across the nation. We are not unique in this, and we have actually stolen it from another state, as so many others have. And the essential elements, the first one is always that political and civic will to address your constituencies that don't necessarily have a voice. Those people that are marginalized and those that often are thought of as other. Next. So in order for us to address homelessness on the Kenai Peninsula, and in the Kenai area specifically, we want to bring this information to you because we want this to be something at the forefront of the council's mind when making decisions in regards to funding, in regards to partnerships, and just general work together in order to solve the problem of homelessness. The more that we get out there and talk about this issue, the more that we get the folks on the council to understand that this issue exists, the better it's going to be for those folks that, again, really don't have a voice in regards to what goes on with them. Next. So this is what is the best practices, but this year is different. So everything we've done in the past, we've always done with best practices, but in 2020, COVID-19 hit, and it was after our Project Homeless Connect event, but certainly well within the time when the virus was active, and so we've had to rethink a lot of what best practices look like. So this is what we used to do. This year is definitely different, and so I can't really speak to how best practices are going to come into play. So we'll just go ahead and move forward. Next, please. Traditionally, these are the services that we provide. Everything from haircuts to veterinarian services for individuals' pets to VA services for veterans of our military, folks that need food, access to food pantries. We often provide eye exams. We give them Narcan kits. We talk about substance use. We provide access to public assistance, phone services, public transportation, a slew of things that we provide during this one day of the year event, which occurred last year but will not be occurring the same way this year. Next. So here's what you really care about, the data. So this is a cumulative series of slides that talk about data that we've been collecting. What you can see is we have a gradual increase over the last 3 years of the number of people impacted by Project Homeless Connect. That is the red bar. So that is the total number of people impacted, whereas the blue bar is the actual person that came to the event. So although only one person out of a family may come to Project Homeless Connect, their entire family is impacted by the resources that they receive during that day. Next. We have a variety of sexes. It's pretty much 50-50, females, males. We do ask whether or not they choose to identify if they wish to share this. So there is a slight discrepancy in some numbers. But more importantly with this slide is I'd like you to look at the green disability. Many individuals that participate in Project Homeless Connect have a disability or have several. This is, again, an underserved population, and their disability should be considered when addressing system changes. Next. When we look at where they were housed, in 2020, the majority of folks were staying with friends and family, and you can see that that blue bar has been consistently high for many years. Non-habitable, it comes and goes. Those would be sheds, tents, homes that have, no reason to even send your worst enemy to. I mean, homes that don't have electricity, don't have water, anything that is considered non-habitable. And then emergency covers our shelters. So those would be anyone that utilizes Love Inc. services for emergency shelter in a hotel, or maybe the Lee Shore Center or some of our homeless entities. Next. Generally, the reason for homelessness, as you can see for 2020, we're looking at a loss of a job. 2021, I'm sure that blue bar is going to be higher. Next. Generally speaking, we ask everyone what they thought of the event, whether or not it was the first time they've been to one, and whether or not they felt the services were helpful. From this graph, you can see that, generally speaking, we have consistently provided helpful services, and people that have come to the event have felt that they were treated with respect, and that's something that's very important to us on the committee. Next. As we dig more into the data, there were 148 people that participated last year with 316 individuals impacted. 68% of that 148 were currently homeless at the time of the event. The event happens in January, so that tells you how many people were experiencing the cold. 70% experience alcohol abuse, developmental disabilities, drug use, have mental health issues, physical disabilities. Again, I want to highlight the disability aspect of this population. 20% said that they were homeless due to a loss of job. Overall, these numbers are pretty much on par for what they were in 2019. I want to say that in 2019, when I presented to you, I want to say it was 21% were homeless due to a loss of job, while there was like 15% of participants homeless due to domestic violence. So it's very close in numbers between the two. Next. So although we try to have this be an all-inclusive event, there are still services that are needed and or requested. This list is just a general list that's provided by participants of the things that they need or would request, and I'd like to highlight just a couple of them. One is the emergency cold weather shelter. You're going to hear us talk about that from here until we have one, because we need a cold weather shelter for any time it is below freezing. We should have something to be able to house people in emergencies. Second is that we are lacking a non-domestic violence shelter option in the city of Kenai for women and children. That has been something that is needed as well. Our women's shelter in Soldotna is very small and can only accommodate so many women and even fewer children. Although they do try to support children, it is more difficult for the shelter in Soldotna to be able to do that, and really that's the only nonviolent shelter option that we have. Next. So let's talk about 2020 in consideration of COVID-19. So the food bank has provided some data for us to look at. So going from October 5th through December, you can see that there were individuals that received food on Mondays, Wednesdays, and the little sliver is 12 students in transition that consistently received food, and then there was a population that met at the hospice parking lot to receive food. And so this graph really shows that there's been an increase in the 11 weeks that the food bank has had extra food to give out due to CARES Act money. The need has increased. These people were never counted for before. And I apologize for running over. If we can go next. So for 2021, we're going to be asking folks, where did they sleep on the night of January 26th? And next. And the event is going to be from January 27th through February 10th. We will count people at a variety of locations, and we will be having boots on the ground going to homeless camps during that 2-week period. So that kind of gives you an idea of where we were and where we are, and in an overall statement, we've been providing a decade of support to those experiencing housing crisis, and we will continue to do so into the future. COVID-19 isn't going to stop us, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Any questions of Ms. Stewart? The council, Councilmember Glendenning.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Just a question regarding the COVID outbreak. How severe was it in the homeless community? Is there a way you can monitor or calculate that?
I wish there was, council member. I can tell you that anecdotally, the folks that are experiencing homelessness or near homelessness are the sickest among us. They use the most services of our medical community, which means that these individuals are the ones with additional health issues that if they were to get COVID-19 would face harder recovery, as well as, you know, just what we all know. Whether or not they go to the hospital, if they wind up getting intubated, are on a ventilator, and death. So this population would be an increased risk just due to a variety of health issues that they all seem to face.
Any other questions of Ms. Stewart? I would request, it was kind of hard to read, Ms. Stewart, so would you object to forwarding that PowerPoint to our clerk so she might be able to disperse it to council so we get a little better read on it? Oh, you do?
Absolutely, and I do believe I've already sent that, as well as the actual official 2020 data report, and she can certainly get that to you guys, or I can resend if necessary.
Okay, very good. And one other thing, we usually donate or provide donation, I think around $500 to help with your Homeless Connect. Does that sound right?
Yes, and I would like to say thank you very much for the City of Kenai to continue to support our efforts in addressing this issue. We greatly appreciate it. I do believe that we've made the request for this year, and if my memory serves me correct, I would like to thank you again for supporting us for the 2021 event, which will, again, be very different.
Councilmember Petty.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Ms. Stewart, is your project Homeless Connect, is that a 501c3? And did you apply for any of the COVID money that the city had, or perhaps the borough had?
That's an excellent question. Thank you for asking. We are an umbrella account with Bridges Community Services. So we are under their 501c3. We were able to tap into some CARES Act money that was given as a grant to Love Inc. But because of just the nature of our work, we did not request money for Project Homeless Connect during the grant process because our event wasn't going to happen until 2021.
Thank you. You might consider, because I believe that deadline has been extended, and you might research some of the opportunities that might be afforded for you. So just FYI. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the data.
Thank you.
Councilmember Naxton.
Yeah, Mayor Gabriel, I'd like to move that we donate, the council donate $100 to the annual update of the, for the Project Homeless Connect. $500, sorry.
Second?
Mayor Gabriel,
Ms. Sines.
$500 was included in the budget, and they've already requested that $500. Is this an additional $500?
I guess what I was wondering is just to make sure it was in the, I didn't know if it was in the budget for that, or does that, seemed to me it was something that we had approved at the time
Yeah,
of
it was included in the budget for
Okay.
FY21, and they have requested the $500, and
Oh.
payment is in the works, so I just wanted to clarify if, is
So-
that satisfying, or is there?
I'd forgotten that it was in the budget.
Okay, that's on a legislative.
Do you want to withdraw that? What do you want to do?
Say again?
I was
What
just
did you
wondering if you
wanna
wanted to withdraw your motion.
I'll withdraw the motion.
I'll concur.
Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to make sure that they got that event coming up. I wanted to make sure that it was, I guess I was unaware. I thought that we had approved that at a council meeting as a supplemental funding, but I just wanted to make sure that it was covered, that we were gonna, that it was approved in some manner. Any other questions of Ms. Stewart? Thank you, Ms. Stewart. And as always, we look forward to a presentation on the, or at least provided information of the data that you collect for this year.
Thank you. I hope to have a better story and to see everyone's faces when I present this next year.
Yes, thank you, and good luck. I know it's going to be a little more challenging this year than it probably normally is for you, so thank you for your hard work in this area.
Thank you so much.
Next up, we have Coy West, City of Kenai Tourism and Marketing Update. Mr. West?
Hi, I hope everybody can hear me, and I don't know if you can see me. I just turned my camera on. I want to thank the council for giving me an opportunity to speak. I had hoped to be there in person, much like we were this time last year. Unfortunately, we just weren't able to coordinate that, and so I'm thankful for the opportunity to speak to you virtually tonight. I also want to congratulate the new members of council. I hope that I can get a chance to meet you in person when I'm there next time. Our current goals at the moment are to try and be there in March if the conditions allow. I do have dates on the calendar still for early June, so there's still the possibility to come sometime during the summer. What I hope to do tonight in the time allotted is really give you something of a recap of the work that we have done this year since the last time that I had a chance to visit with you in person. And then at the end of my comments, I believe there's an example of some of our work that you'll get a chance to take a look at. We left council this time last year after presenting the Best Place to Alaska campaign. Certainly we had no idea what was coming down the pipe with COVID this year, but we managed to overcome many of those obstacles and achieve quite a bit of work. After visiting with council in January, we started working on the Kenai Silver Salmon Derby, the 4th annual Kenai Silver Salmon Derby, which included new poster artwork. It included an updated website and some outreach to try and drive sponsorships for the event in September. Despite some of the setbacks, I'm happy to report that we saw a 360% increase in sponsorships. We also saw a 50% increase in ticket sales, which was a little bit lower than what we had hoped, given the circumstances, though. We were pretty proud of the work that we were able to do and the funding that was able to go to the Kenai Community Foundation. Additionally, we worked on promoting the Eagle Cam. We sent out a series of press releases to promote that event on YouTube. We also promoted it on social media as well. And although I wasn't able to capture all of the viewership during the time that camera was up, I think at times we saw about a 5x or 6x increase in viewers at any given moment. Certainly we've built a great foundation for that, and hopefully if the Eagles return this year, we can repeat that. Simultaneously, we were actually working on a website to support our efforts to promote the city of Kenai as a place to relocate, open up a business, and travel. We launched the website ilovekenai.com along with social media handles to promote the beauty of the city and the vast opportunities that exist there for families or professionals that are hoping to relocate. So if you get a chance, take a look at that website. Certainly follow it on social media. There's some really great things happening with some great photography from the city. We also managed to travel to Kenai, or at least our creative director, John Taylor, who lives there in Kenai. He was able to travel back home and spend the summer there, which allowed us to capture quite a bit of footage of Kenai for film and photography. When we visited with you last time in person, that was in January, we were actually there capturing footage of Kenai in the wintertime. And that has allowed us to put together quite a bit of materials for the campaigns that we hope to roll out here soon, promoting the city of Kenai, both for relocation, business, and travelers. During the early fall, say late summer, we spent a significant amount of time really digging into research to try and understand what has changed with travel as well as with relocation during the COVID crisis. We spent a significant amount of time really looking for those opportunities where we might be able to attract entrepreneurs or businesses, as well as people who are seeking that Alaskan lifestyle that they were hoping for in other communities, or those that are actually seeking to make a new start in a new city or a new state. And that has actually informed us on our strategy that we will be rolling out. It is a hyper-targeted online campaign that will employ image advertising as well as video advertising. And we feel pretty good about what we are working on and where we hope to go with that. And then subsequently, from September to December, we were fortunate enough to provide marketing services under the Kenai Small Business Grant. During that time, we were able to work with 25 small businesses there in Kenai, providing them with a wide variety of services that ranged from website design, online advertising, search engine optimization, some display advertising, you name it. We even did some graphic design and ran some display ads on the Radio Kenai website. That work wrapped up at the end of December, and even though our scope under that particular contract is completed, we have left open the door to all of those small businesses that if they'd like to reach out to me personally for any advice or any tips or anything that we can help them with in the future, we're happy to do it. So that really kind of brings us to the conclusion here, and something that I hope to share with you. We are poised to launch the Best Place to Alaska. We're very excited about it. I think we were able to give you just a little bit of a sneak peek into what our thinking was and what our strategy was last January. This campaign should be deployed here in the next few weeks. And so I believe you are about to watch a video, if that could be played.
Okay, we're going to minimize the people on Zoom and start the video.
Okay.
We might need a minute to turn down the volume so we don't blow everybody's eardrums out now.
Okay, all right.
How do you, Alaska?
Okay.
Okay. So that is, I don't know if you can hear me again or if you need to turn mics up, but that is one iteration of the videos that we will be releasing. There's actually a series of image ads that go along with it. Once again, our goal is to present the city of Kenai as the very best place to seek the Alaskan lifestyle with the unique beauty and the unique opportunities that are presented there, as well as for promoting the city as a business-friendly community and a place for travelers to seek adventure. My hope is that the next time that I get to visit with you, whether that's in March or in June, I have quite a bit of data points to show you on the success of those campaigns. And that really wraps up my comments. Really in closing, despite the challenges that were presented to us, many of the travel delays and some of the obstacles that we face with scheduling for many of the photo shoots and video shoots and some of the other things that COVID brought along with it, we feel really great about where we're at today. And we're really bullish about 2021 as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West. Any questions, comments from council for Mr. West? Well, thank you for the presentation, and yes, that was our esteemed colleague here, Councilmember Naxted, in the last shot there. So it's glad to see him in there get his film career started. Looks good. So I thought it went very well. I was impressed with it. And I'm look forward to see the full rollout.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do you have any comment, Mr. Taylor? If he's on. Okay. Okay. Well, thanks again for the Divining Point presentation, and like I said, look forward to the full rollout here. Next up, we have unscheduled public comment. Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to address the council at this time on any item that is not on the agenda or consent agenda?
Anybody on Zoom can unmute or use the raise hand feature.
Nobody on? Okay. That brings us to item D, public hearings. First up, we have under item D1, ordinance number 3173-2020, accepting and appropriating asset forfeiture sharing funds for the police department for the purpose of purchasing law enforcement equipment. Vice Mayor Malloy.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Move to enact ordinance number 3173-2020.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3173-2020? Anybody online?
Anybody can use your raise hand feature. Nobody's.
Say no, we'll bring back to council. Discussion, comments from council? Councilmember Petty.
I have a question for Mr. Ross. On the amount that's being shared, what is the ratio? Is it 50-50, 75-25, 100%?
Chief Ross.
Thank you, sir.
Councilor Petty to the mayor. It really depends. The Drug Enforcement Administration determines that on federal cases, so the money goes there, and then the state and us kind of tell what we did in the particular case, and then they determine based on our involvement the percentages. So it varies from case to case. The feds keep their part, and the state gets part, and we get part typically.
So was the feds involved in our city's activities?
So it's not uncommon that some cases are federally prosecuted in the drug environment. Some cross over borders, cross over towns, cross over cities, and they're prosecuted in the federal courts. So that's when there's task force in Alaska. They include the DEA, the state, and we participate commonly. And those task force usually take the more complicated drug ring type cases, and then they make a decision whether they're prosecuted in the state or with the federal prosecutor.
Thank you, sir.
Any further comments, questions from council? Thank you, Chief Ross. Seeing no other further discussion, clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxtet?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Malloy?
Yes.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
Councilmember Glendenning?
Yes.
Councilmember Petty?
Yes.
Councilmember Askin?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Council, we're on item D2, ordinance number 3174-2020, accepting and appropriating an FM Global Fire Prevention Grant for the purchase of 2 iPads and accessories to be used towards fire prevention efforts. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Naxton.
I move to enact ordinance 3174, 2020.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance number 3174-2020?
If you're online, you can unmute or raise your hand.
Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, discussion from council. Councilmember Winger.
I just see this to being a great asset to our fire department. I've seen this used in other states. It's definitely a great tool, and I'm excited that we're bringing that on.
Thank you. Councilmember Glendenning.
Yeah, just a question. These iPads, do they have a protective case with them? I know when I drag mine infrequently out in my pickup truck, sometimes it has precarious existence. And this is going to be in action in the field, correct? Just a question.
Sure. Mr. Ostrander.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Glendenning. Yeah, this covers the costs of the iPads plus the cases, which, like you say, are necessary for the field use.
Any further discussion from council? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Naxtet?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Malloy?
Yes.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
Councilmember Glendenning?
Yes.
Councilmember Petty?
Yes.
Councilmember Askin?
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We're on item D3, ordinance number 3175-2020, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the Airport Improvements Capital Fund and authorizing an increase to the construction purchase order to Carrilla Fire Incorporated. Vice Mayor Malloy.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Move to enact ordinance number 3175-2020.
I'll second that.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance number 3175-2020?
Anybody online can unmute or raise your hand.
Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, deliberation from council. Vice Mayor Malloy.
I'm sorry, I left my...
Yeah, I didn't see you in the crouching tiger position. That's on that, but I thought your light was on, so I call it. Councilmember Naxton.
Just a quick question for Mr. Ostrander. The work was substantially completed back in March, and we had a lot of time to determine that there were some things that needed to be done. Were we in contract the whole time with this consultant, or how did that work?
Mr. Ostrander.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Naxton, yeah, they remain under contract even though there was substantial completion. There were still some remaining items that we knew that they needed to complete. But like you said, there's been multiple things that have been identified since that substantial completion date that most of this change order is associated with that need to be taken care of now, that were outside the original scope of work. But yes, they've been under contract. The contract has not been closed out.
Any further discussion from council deliberation? I just had one question, and it's a little bit unrelated, but somewhat related, maybe for Mary. Was wondering how the COVID impacts. I know there's personally some folks that have been doing the beacon training, but was wondering, or the ARP training rather, but is there, as far as numbers go, how did this look year over year with the new equipment?
Mayor Gabriel, I can attempt to answer that, and if Mary has additional information, she can provide it. You know, but we have not gotten the updated year-end date information from Beacon yet, so I don't have any specific data on how COVID impacted them. I know that it did obviously cause some impacts during the course of their training, but I don't know if Mary has any additional information beyond that. You need to go.
Mayor Gabriel, members of council, I do know that they did resume some ARP training with the State of Alaska Airport personnel, and they have done some slope training, but we are requesting the numbers, we don't have them. There has been some training during this cold weather, which is something they didn't do in the past for small groups, like for the slope. But I anticipate, hopefully, when they start up again in September, that we'll be getting those numbers back again.
Okay, very good. Yeah, and all the comments that I've gotten from the folks that I know that have used those, used the training with the new props have been really, really happy with them. So with that, I'll bring it back to council. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Malloy,
Yes.
Councilmember Winger,
Yes.
Councilmember Glendenning,
Yes.
Councilmember Petty,
Yes.
Councilmember Askin,
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Councilmember Naxtet,
Yes.
motion passes.
Next up, we have ordinance number 3176-2020, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the airport special revenue and airport snow removal equipment capital and project funds to provide supplemental funding for the project and authorizing purchase agreement for the purchase of a replacement wide area tractor and mower. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Naxton.
I move to enact ordinance 3176, 2020.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3176-2020?
Again, those of you on Zoom can unmute or raise your hand. Nope.
Thank you. And to see there's a requested substitute with this ordinance. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor. I move at this time to move substitute ordinance 3176, 2020.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion?
Request unanimous consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Councilmember Glendenning.
Just a question. Is this a four-wheel drive tractor?
I think we can probably address that under the, if we just move the substitute, it's essentially the same. So any objection to the substitute? Seeing none, we're now considering substitute ordinance 3176-2020. With that, I'll defer to Mr. Glendenning again.
Is it a four-wheel drive tractor?
Councilmember, or Mr. Ostrander.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Glendenning, I believe it's two-wheel drive. Mary probably knows for certain, two-wheel drive.
Okay, that makes sense. It's on the airport, it's leveled. Yeah, good job.
Any further discussion on substitute ordinance 3176-2020? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Winger,
Yes.
Councilmember Glendenning,
Yes.
Councilmember Petty,
Yes.
Councilmember Askin,
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Councilmember Naxtet,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Malloy,
Yes.
motion passes.
Council, we're now on item G5, discussion COVID-19 response. Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. So last time we met, we actually had 5 employees that were in COVID protocol. I'm happy to announce that we have no employees right now that are in COVID protocol. So substantial improvement over the last time. Matter of fact, I think it's been about a week since we've had anyone in the protocol. So great news there. We did reopen City Hall. I know I notified council by email, but we did reopen City Hall. The employees are still following the same protocols we had in place, which essentially is if they're in a common area, if they can't maintain that 6 feet, they're wearing masks, but if they're at their own desks, they don't have to. We'll keep that in place for a while. There doesn't seem to be a lot of pushback from the employees, and I think for a lot of employees, it helps them feel a lot safer in that work environment. So we're going to keep that in place for a while. The ice rink is also open for out-of-town teams, and the locker rooms are open with limited capacity. Back in late December, both hockey associations came to me and requested that we consider that. I worked with Mr. Frates, and we really discussed, depending on how the counts looked and how things progressed, we would consider it in early January. And when I came back from vacation, Bob and I talked about it again. The numbers were looking good, and the Hockey Association still very much wanted to have those tournaments in mid-January. So we both determined that it made a lot of sense to do that, give those kids an opportunity to play out of town teams. I know both hockey associations are really excited about that, and we hope to continue with that for the remainder of the year. The library is scheduled to reopen on January 18th with similar protocols that we had in place prior to when they closed on November 14th. It's surprising that it will have been over 2 months that the library will have been closed by the time we reopen, but I did talk to Katja today, and the staff is ready and willing to open on January 18th, and they're excited to get folks back in the library. I also wanted to report on the rec center. The rec center does remain open. It's at 25% capacity right now. There's also additional mitigation strategies in place as far as they require 10 feet of separation. Masks are recommended but not required when you're on workout equipment, but it is open. But it's at 25% capacity, and it has been that way for, I'd say, probably 3 or 4 months. So it's pretty much status quo where it's been for the last 4 months. They do hope to loosen those restrictions if the COVID numbers continue to fall. So I know Mr. Frates again reached out and talked to Boys and Girls Club administration this last week, and they said that they very much are looking forward to the possibility of loosening those restrictions if the numbers warrant it. As far as the Central Peninsula Hospital, there are 4 patients currently hospitalized due to COVID. Over the last 2 weeks, it's been ranging between 4 and 6. Just prior to 2 weeks ago, it was actually down to no COVID patients in the hospital. So certainly from what we saw a month or 6 weeks ago, looks much better at the hospital than it has. And the last thing, there are 2 memos included in your laydown. One that was prepared by Mr. Eubank that does give a rundown of the expenditures and available balances for all of the departments associated with the CARES Act funding, and then specifically a breakdown of the administration and non-payroll expenditures. These are similar to what council has seen over the last couple of meetings. And then in addition to that, there's a memo that I provided for council's information, and I'm certainly willing to discuss either one of those memos or anything else that I discussed in my report in more detail if council has questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Ostrander from council? Councilmember Winger.
Mr. Ostrander, did I miss if the Kenai Chamber building was open back up to the public?
Mr. Ostrander.
Through the mayor, Ms. Winger, I didn't mention it, but they are open. Matter of fact, Ms. Brittany Brown is in the audience here, and she could tell you the date for sure, but I believe that they closed for approximately 3 weeks from that November 14th date. So somewhere around the 1st of December, they reopened, and they've been open since that date.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Glendenning.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yes, I'm heartened to see the thoughtful progression of opening our facilities. I was over the holidays. I was contacted by some hockey moms, and I'm sure Bob was too, and you also. And it's good to see that we're going to start having a hockey season for the kids. And I think if I heard on the radio correctly, the high school is probably going to have some activities there also. the Brown Bears, they're coming back perhaps, but they'll be more involved with Soldotna facility. Is that correct? They don't have it in their view to use ours?
Mr. Ostrander.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Glendenning, Mr. Frady's might have some information on this that I'm not privy to, but, typically they do operate primarily out of the Soldotna Sports Center. I'm not sure if Bob has been contacted by them as far as utilizing our facility for this winter or not. Can you provide us any additional information, Bob?
Mr. Frady's.
Yep, through the mayor. I have not. I've had conversations with Andrew Carmichael at the Sports Center. As of right now, there's discussions taking place on that front, but primarily that pertains to use of the Sports Center and not so much our facility. So we'll stand by and we'll see what materializes. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or discussion regarding Vice Mayor Malloy?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I have a question for the city manager. Has to do with Executive Order number 4 that had to do with leave for employees. It was a little confusing to me. I know there was a leave provided with CARES Act fund, and then the order repealed it and provided some other leave. Could you just give a brief explanation of it Thank you.
Mr. Ostrander.
Through the mayor, thank you, Vice Mayor Malloy. So in 2020, Executive Order, I believe it was 1, it might have been 2, actually instituted instituted temporary leave, which provided for 80 hours of leave for all employees that was associated with COVID. So if they were sick with COVID, if they'd been exposed, or if they were just sick, if they felt sick, we wanted to encourage folks to stay home in case they did have COVID. So they were given 80 hours of leave. After that executive order, there was actually there was a federal requirement that an additional 80 hours of federal leave was required to be provided to our employees as well. So in total, in 2020, employees had up to 160 hours of leave that they could utilize for COVID-related purposes. As of December 30th, the federal leave went away, and we wanted to restart the clock on January 1. So what we did was when the federal leave went away, that any remaining balance that an employee had of that 80 hours of city temporary leave, that was also zeroed out. And then at the beginning of January 1 of this year, all employees were then renewed with 80 hours of COVID leave that was available. And of course, that's available as long as the emergency declaration is in place.
Thank you. Then, if I may.
Yes.
Just wanted to add a little bit to the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
I asked for a laydown, which was a link for council and the public to an ABC News article, and I thought it really informative and interesting, especially because it featured our local Kenai Peninsula Food Bank. And Greg Meyer, the executive director, about, trying to figure out how to get food to the public and the benefit of the federal program that came through the agricultural department of food boxes. And, in addition to the funds that we granted to the Kenai Peninsula Food Bank, through the CARES Act program for operations, we also granted them up to $77,000 for food boxes for the city of Kenai. And it was really interesting to read this and his comments about, they went from 80,000 pounds of food in October 2019 to 242,000 pounds of food in October this year. And through the program that we were assisting, they were getting food boxes to 200 Kenai households weekly. Until it ran out in December. And so the point of that is just to, I don't know what, I haven't studied or looked at the 1,000-page document or whatever, which is the new bill that Congress passed in the compromise bill with the $900 billion or whatever, and whether there's money for food banks and that and everything. But if there isn't, it comes through. I'd certainly like to see us continue to support something like that because it's been really beneficial, and he was this was quality food, this was fresh food that was put together through it, and You know, he was expressing in the article his pain over telling people that this program was going away, you know, just after Christmas. So I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention and note that, you know, we had done that to support it. And thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing that forward, Vice Mayor Malloy. Appreciate it. Yes.
I just wanted to point out that the laydown is also on our website, so it can, if you navigate to our website, on the meetings page, and then click view details on the right-hand side of tonight's meeting, you'll find the laydown materials at the bottom of that, and the link is live, obviously, in that document.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Any, Councilmember Glendenning?
Yeah, just on the COVID theme, two things. One is KPED and the Center for Economic Development are working on a program regarding our economic overview here on the peninsula, and then how we move forward from the COVID situation. They anticipate having their preliminary findings somewhere probably May or June, and so it'd be interesting from here on out if there's a call for to dip into a Zoom meeting or whatnot. It is informative without going through the 2 hours of notes I have. It's going to be a long haul coming back economically. It's going to be tough. There is light at the end of the tunnel, but there are certain conditions that have to be met that we're aware of. And secondly, I listened in on the radio last night to the borough assembly meeting, and there was a Dr. Mitchell who is associated. She's a local practitioner here, an internist associated with the hospital. And although I was listening on the radio, I was able to discern from her presentation that there was a video that showed her getting her injection, and also she gave a very insightful description of the virus treatments that we have now. And I would urge anybody that's curious maybe just to look in on the borough website. If it's not quite available, I'm sure the borough clerk can provide you a link to it. And I found it was a very thorough and encouraging discussion. And that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Ms. Hines?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. She actually reached out to us today, and she'll be at our next meeting.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, good timing. Any further discussion on COVID? Councilmember Naxton?
Well, I had something, but first, thanks, Mr. Glendenning, for bringing that up. And I'll be looking forward to that at our next meeting when she comes here. So that'll be good information to have and timely. Yeah, just kind of briefly, I just wanted to thank the city manager and Terry Eubank for the laydown memo and, you know, the backup information on the COVID, the money that we've spent, and it's good to. We've done an awful lot. We've approved an awful lot since May or June when we started working on this. It's good to have this all laid out, and it kind of reminds me also of the restrictions that were put on some of the funds that we received from the Kenai Peninsula Borough. I think it was $2.7 million, and how that could be spent. And it was a little bit different than the rest. So this kind of helps explain that to the public, and kind of reminds me of that too. And also regarding the allocation of other funds into the city, and you know, extending that, having that money for the city down the road for projects or whatnot. And I'm not an economist, but I'm an engineer, and economists tell me in projects that I've worked on is when you build something, if it's a road or infrastructure, there's about a multiplier of 7 into the community when that goes. So in light of what Mr. Glendenning was saying, long road we have, that those monies will be well spent and well received in our community, you know, if we're looking at a factor anywhere close to 7, which is kind of what I believe. So I don't know if you have anything more that you want to share with us that was in your memo, any details, but I certainly appreciate the time and effort that you put into that. Thank you.
Mr. Ostrander?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel and Councilmember Naxton. I guess I would highlight a couple things. And first, I'd start with, the process of putting this memo together was really helpful for me as well, because it's been a long 8 months, and you kind of forget how the steps you had to take to get where we're at. And so it was really helpful for me to go through it as well. The $2.7 million that we did receive from the borough, I think, is something that we should be really proud of as a city, because that was money that we really helped to facilitate. It was efforts of members of the borough assembly, the borough administration, and then the city of Kenai that allowed that $2.7 million come to the city, which I don't think we would have seen without the efforts of those individuals. And then on top of that, you can see with the memo, there was almost $5.5 million of money that went to other municipalities because of those efforts. So really proud of those efforts and the part that the city played in that. And also in going through this, I had several conversations with folks about what our process was for reaching out to people during the grant program. And one of the things I don't think I've done a good job of relaying is that we did go through an active effort of actually mailing notices to businesses and nonprofits within the city. So as you can see here, there's 335 City of Kenai businesses that we specifically mailed notices to, that gave them the opportunity to either apply online or print out an application, do all those things. And also the individual efforts of the 3 folks within the city that actually worked with applicants one-on-one throughout this process to make sure that they had the best chance for success, they could maximize the amount of money that they'd get through the program. Those were all significant efforts that I think really maximized the ability for the city to get this money out. And one of the main reasons why I wanted to make sure this was out there is just to make sure that folks knew that the money that we were not able to spend out of that $5 million that we allocated for small businesses wasn't because we didn't want to get it out to the businesses. We did everything in our power to do that. We maxed out the amount that we could get to businesses. And at that point, that $1.1 million, because we had a deadline of December 31st, had to be reallocated somewhere. It's now being used to pay for payroll for first responders, which in reality, what that means is that council has the ability to utilize those monies in whatever way they feel will provide the greatest benefit to the residents of the city of Kenai. So it really gives the council great flexibility going forward, that if there are additional needs that our city has, that we have that money available now that we can use to support those needs. Thank you.
Councilmember Glendenning. I'm sorry, did you have a follow-up?
Just a little bit, if you don't mind. The deadline was the end of the year, but we didn't realize that the deadline would be extended till like the 27th?
December 27th.
Right. So and you would have expended all the funds. Probably one of the few municipalities, I'm guessing, that would have, because we got on the ball.
Yeah, through the mayor, Councilmember Nackstead, I think we would have been one of a very few number of municipalities that would have spent all the money.
Councilmember Glendenning.
Yeah, thank you, Manager Ostrander, for your candid review, and I look forward to your recommendations on how to go forward. Thank you.
Councilmember Petty.
Also, I would just like to say that we didn't spend any of the money. We reallocated those resources. We were given that responsibility to reallocate, because I just want to point out that fine point that we really weren't spending anything, that we were allocating to help our community in that. So thank you for letting me just put those 2 cents out there.
Sure. Councilmember Winger.
Thank you. While we're discussing COVID-19, I'd like to bring a little attention to the laydown material that was presented to us. There was an email submitted from a lady by the name of Nancy. I don't want to butcher her last name. Is it Lethe? Megan, maybe you would know. Lethe? Okay. I too have been approached by a few people recently when it comes to the COVID vaccines, distribution locations, and then transportation. It seems to be, we all know we have a transportation issue in Kenai. As this lady outlined, a $60 cab fare may not be up some people's ability, especially when the only distribution locations are currently in Soldotna. So I would like council to really look at this. If we want to encourage vaccines in this, Ultimately, we do have a group of people that have transportation issues to get to and from, and maybe we can come up with a good solution going forward so that we can better provide that situation, encourage more participants to get vaccines.
Vice Mayor Malloy.
So to follow up on that, you know, I know that there's a public health building in Kenai, you know, that that Central Peninsula Hospital shares. They have a lab there or whatever. Perhaps our city manager could reach out to hospital administration, and you know, I'm not sure why they wouldn't be able to do vaccination there, because they have nursing. It may be a you know, a staffing issue or whatever, but you know, I know that on occasion our city managers had, you know, communication with the chief executive officer or whatever. Maybe there could be an inquiry about that, because I agree with Councilmember Wenger's point on this. Thank you.
Yeah, and the only thing that can jump to my mind is as far as the available locations. I know that this is temperature sensitive, the vaccines, both the Moderna and the Pfizer, so that they have to be stored at a certain temperature, and then they have to be administered within so much time at repulse. So I'm just guessing that might be part of the reason, but certainly wouldn't hurt to reach out and inquire about that. Councilmember Naxton.
Yeah, reach out and inquire. I agree. There was an article in today's Clarion, and as I was reading through it, I was looking for Kenai, and it wasn't there. But a couple of Soldotna pharmacies were included, and frankly, I expected that I use the Kenai Cars, Safeway, whatever pharmacy, that would have been on the list, but there wasn't any, and I would presume that we could get that here. And the restriction on the temperature is for a while, but then I think there's a number of days where it can be at a more reasonable temperature, but I think that's how it gets distributed. So.
Yeah, I mean, if there's scheduled appointments, there might be an opportunity for them to bring the vaccines over to administer. Yeah, I agree with that. So, Vice Mayor Malloy.
And they also have a family practice location in Kenai, and they have an urgent care center. You know, so.
If I might, Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I am planning on reaching out and trying to figure out an alternative for city residents, particularly after today was the first day that folks over the age of 65 could register for vaccinations, and I know there was an immense amount of frustration. I know of several folks over 65 that tried most of the day to get an appointment to get vaccinated, and yet in the end were simply put on a wait list. They could not get an appointment at any time in the next 3 weeks to get a vaccination. So there's clearly demand out there that's not being met. There's several options. The health clinic is one option. There's also the option that we could actually provide some of these services with our EMS personnel. Chief Pryor has been working on that as an option. It's something that we've kind of put on the back burner, waiting to see if there was truly enough demand to justify the city EMS folks getting involved. But at this point, that might be a good option. And if I could just speak briefly about what Councilmember Winger discussed. She reached out to me earlier this week and talked about this, and we have worked on that internally. And our internal group has come up with, I think, is a really solid plan to hopefully execute what you're hoping to do as far as providing transportation services for folks. So in working with Ms. Winger, I think we can get something in front of council at the next meeting for your consideration.
Any further discussion on COVID-19 response? Seeing none, we'll move to commission committee reports. Council on Aging.
Yes, our meeting on January the 14th has been canceled due to lack of agenda, and I believe our next time is in February sometimes, and I'll have that specifically next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Petty. Airport Commission.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Airport Commission's next meeting is January 14th, and Mary, we're going to have one? Okay. Sometimes I find out the next day.
Oh,
So.
gotcha. Thank you. Harbor Commission?
No report.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Commission?
Yes, thank you. So our meeting for tomorrow has been canceled. I want to point out that they have been doing a great job getting out and doing the ice there at Dobbinspec Park. So they've been maintaining that really well. It's definitely ready and able to be used by people. They've been doing the ski trails as well, so everything's looking nice. Definitely encouraging to get everybody to get outside, enjoy some fresh air into this new year. And we will meet on February 4th if Bob doesn't cancel us.
Planning and Zoning Commission?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. The next meeting will be a week from today. I don't have a 21 calendar. The date would be, what, 13th?
Yes, the 13th.
13th. Thank you.
And just regarding planning and zoning, do we have any applicants for? Okay, very good. We'll do some outreach there. Beautification Committee?
The meeting for the 13th has been, or the 12th, excuse me, has been canceled, but it's scheduled for April 13th is the next meeting.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I have no report under mini grant steering committee. On report of the mayor, just wanted to say I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. It looked like there was plenty of folks that were taking advantage of the fireworks window in the city of Kenai and well, outside the city for that matter also. But I think I've gotten a lot of feedback from folks that really think that was a neat thing that we allow that, and I know Vice Mayor Malloy and Councilmember Nax said we're on council when there was a ordinance brought up to consider selling fireworks within the city of Kenai, and maybe Councilmember Clinton was on it. So I've had a lot of people that have expressed an interest of maybe us doing that. I think maybe it might be something we should reconsider. We got a year to work on it, but I certainly wouldn't mind seeing people spend money here or have the opportunity and not have to drive to the valley. So just throwing that out there. Coming up 2 weeks from today, I think, we have a chamber meet and greet, Ms. Brown. That's at noon over at or is it Zoom? Was it Zoom? Yes. So I look forward to that, and it's just before our next meeting, so I thought I would announce that. So hopefully everybody got an invite for that. And then Friday afternoon, I'll be swearing in 3 officers over at the New Life Assembly of God Church, which is I think it's on Princess, which is across from the high school. They would have Chief Ross reached out to them. They have a sizable area to be able to practice social distancing. So we have Chad Larson, Austin Asp, and Kevin Grimes scheduled to be sworn in at 1 o'clock. So if anybody from council wants to attend, then they're more than welcome. And with that, I'll move on. I wanted to say one thing during COVID response, and I never really got a chance to, but I did get a chance to, but I was getting ahead of myself. I just wanted to say it was interesting because a year ago, last March, Mr. Ostrander and I were prepping for our State of the City address for the Chamber, which was the first Wednesday in March. And sort of as an afterthought of prepping for this presentation, COVID was, starting to rear its ugly head. And I asked Mr. Ostrander, I said, do you have just to let you know, someone from the public might ask during question and answer what we're doing for COVID, and which was appropriate at that time. Mr. Ostrander said, well, we're kind of following what we have. We're putting out hand sanitizer and, practicing what was suggested at that time. And it wasn't 3 days later, I think the NBA got canceled, the NHL got canceled, the Players Championship, which I had DVR'd and was looking forward to watch. I mean, everything just stopped all of a sudden. And one thing that I wanted to say is during that time that COVID suddenly happened, or to respond so quickly. In addition to, allocating the money. And then one of the first questions or discussions we had when this money was allocated, actually through the state first, and then they kind of had a problem distributing it. And then when we got it, one of the first conversations with Mr. Ostrander was that we have to get this out to the businesses as quickly as we can, because that's who needed it. And that was the, sort of start of that template that they put together. That I think it was sort of that push that other municipalities were waiting for to see, okay, how can we do this, or how, and still, still meet the demands of the grant program. So anyway, I know I'm kind of prattling on here a little bit, but I just wanted to end my comments with that. And with that, we'll move to administration reports. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. The borough has had an anadromous task force that's been meeting for about a month now, and they're hoping to finish up their work in a rewrite of 2118, which is the code that is the anadromous code in the borough. Regulates that first 50 feet above mean high water on rivers and lakes on the peninsula. Both Scott Bloom and I have been working on specific language with the city attorney, the borough attorney, and Robert Ruffner regarding the tidally influenced areas within the city of Kenai and how we can draft this so we can allow for responsible development in that area. There's a draft code right now that Scott and I are going to get back to the borough on Friday. I would like to have a code that our administration and the borough and Mr. Ruffner feels is appropriate to council at your next meeting for your consideration and hopefully your support. The next day, on the 21st, is the day when they'll likely, the anadromous task force will be voting on this change to the code. So hopefully we can get that to you. Council can chew on it and then give us a recommendation that we can bring to the borough the next day. Mr. Eubank told me that the final audit supplement for the CARES Act expenditures was released on the 24th of December. That was what BDO was waiting for so that they can complete the CAFR. Terry's going to finalize the financials late this week and early next week. And Joy from BDO should be here at your January 20th meeting to give the presentation, either here in person or on Zoom. I'm not sure which yet, but she'll be giving you the CAFR presentation after they've updated it with that audit supplement for the CARES Act. And last is Bluff Project. The RFP is nearing completion. We'll be getting the document to the Corps for their review shortly, and again, we hope to get that out on the street this month. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of the city manager? Councilman Glendenning.
Yeah, just I had a question. Maybe it was a meeting or so ago about our fine arts center, and it just when you have time, because I know you're real busy, just maybe give us a little dip in, a little insight as to how the reconstruction project is going.
Mr. Ostrander.
And I can speak to that, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Glendenning. So I got a preliminary report on that this week, and I wasn't quite prepared to give it to you tonight, but it is my plan to get it to you shortly. I will tell you that, as you would expect, it appears that many of the cost estimates are higher than what were anticipated. But once I get that better formulated, I'll make sure I give you a thorough report on where that project stands.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the city manager? Seeing none, we'll go to city attorney, Mr. Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, members of council. At the last meeting, I had talked to you very briefly about a proposal in the governor's budget to start charging the city for the prosecution of misdemeanors. I had anticipated maybe bringing some legislation forward for council to weigh in on. However, I think the best route for me to go after having discussions with AML, and I talked to Senator Keel and Juneau as well as Senator Machicki, is for me to draft a letter that can be shared with various representatives throughout the state. And so that's my plan. what I would envision is drafting this letter. I know Chief Ross will help me a little bit with some of the figures from our police department, and then I would distribute it to council and to either distribute to some of our local legislatures or do what they want, as well as I'd give a copy to AML and any other interested municipalities that might want to use the letter. So unless there's an objection to that, that's my plan. It would.
Objection from council, the body? Give us an idea of the context of
The context of the letter? Yeah, and if
generally.
you wanted, I would be happy to email it out to council before I finalize it, if that's the desire. What I'm basically going to do is just the cost to the city of Kenai would be $123,700. Basically, they figure that one district attorney can prosecute 500 misdemeanors a year, and so they're rounding the number of misdemeanors that each community has to the closest 500. They figured ours was slightly over 500 at 523 or something, but they rounded down to 500. So they would want us to pay the salary for one district attorney in Kenai. And that wouldn't be consistent through the state because it costs them more to hire district attorneys throughout. But basically, I just want to touch on the law, that the Alaska statutes require the Attorney General to prosecute state crimes, and we don't have any local misdemeanors on our books. I also don't find a meaningful distinction in singling out home rule communities. Their argument is that home rule communities, the council can enact misdemeanors, but other first-class and even second-class cities and boroughs have enacted misdemeanors throughout the state. And I think even like our borough could if they went to a vote of the people, and the people gave the borough police powers. So I would just provide a little bit of legal argument and some practical argument. Chief Ross and I were talking about a lot of the services that the police department provides for the state, and it doesn't really make sense for the state to start charging us when we're not charging the state for serving warrants, domestic violence, restraining orders, mental health holds, all that kind of stuff, evictions sometimes that we do for the state. It's just the relationship that law enforcement has with the court and other law enforcement jurisdictions. And so it would be an advocacy letter, but try and keep it as factual as I can.
Very good. Vice Mayor Malloy.
Thank you. So I appreciate your bringing that modified plan to us. And, I don't have a problem with the letter such as you suggest, but why do you think that there wouldn't be a benefit to there also being a council resolution from the council? Because I see a lot of policy part of this. I mean, I don't see why we should, as a city, pay for the state's obligation to prosecute crimes. So maybe you could address that.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Malloy, through the mayor. I do think at some point legislative action might be necessary, but I think based on my conversations with like Senator Machicki, I think my first job is to educate people to the issue. And as the budget process proceeds, then we would do a resolution. But I would like people to be aware of the issue first. And I think that's easier to do in a letter first, and then as the budget process proceeds, we could do a resolution if we thought it was necessary, if our legislators wanted it, or if it was something council just wanted to do.
So thank you. I appreciate that. So it's sort of like, in your view, it's too early in the process of their legislative process for a council comment.
Correct. I want to
Okay.
educate our
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You had answered my question, but
I guess so.
You're welcome to keep talking if the mayor lets you.
He's used up his yearly allotment right there, I think.
I'm never talking again.
So, yeah, I know. So I guess moving forward, are you okay shooting a draft out and then everybody kind of giving the thumbs up, or I mean, I think we're just getting a sense of approval for the concept of you sending the letter, but
I will
definitely.
provide a draft to council with a reasonable opportunity to discuss or object.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions of the city attorney? Seeing none, we'll move to city clerk, Ms. Hines.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, members of council. I have nothing to report, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Is there any questions of the city clerk? Councilmember Glendenning.
Yeah, just someone who is still involved with crayons and finger paints. Could I have a colorized calendar for council meetings and commissions and committees? It would help my business.
Yeah, they made them to the dais. I'm not really sure if somebody visiting this room stole them off of those tables or how they got missing, but I did write it down to give you guys calendars.
Okay, I appreciate it. 2 copies, if you would, for me.
We don't want you to feel like you're on an island there. I can take a picture of it and text it to you if you want. Yeah,
We can give him these 2 and then we can.
Yeah, there you go. Any other questions of the city clerk? Seeing none, we'll move to additional public comment. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to address the council at this time? Do we have anybody online, Jamie?
If anybody's on Zoom, you can unmute or raise your hand.
Seeing none, we'll move to council comments. Councilmember Glendenning.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Well, as you can see, I've relied on Scott and Bob for hairstyling hints, and it's a new year, a new me, and who loves you, baby? Thanks.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you also. Councilmember Glendenning. Councilmember Petty.
Thank you. It's nice to be back and starting a new year, and I appreciate the administration's information about our COVID expenditures, and look forward to living a life COVID-free. So, thank you. That ends my comments.
Thank you, Councilmember Petty. Councilmember Winger.
Yes, thank you. One question for you, Mayor Gabriel. When was that swearing in of our officers? We didn't catch the date.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's this Friday, which is 1 p.m. at the New Life Church of God over there across from high school.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to wish everyone a happy new year. We're in a 2021. We're going to see some great new things happening. Our children are going to be going back to school. It looks like they're kind of working at a plan to get the kids back in location. I know there's a lot of things starting back up for youth, which is really great and positive. The Kenai Peninsula swim team that uses the Kenai High School, they sent out an email today. It looks like our swimmers are going to get back in at a limited capacity into the pools. So I think that's great. We're definitely moving in the right direction. Our hockey rink's open. Hopefully they'll be able to host some tournaments that have been postponed. We have quite a few events starting up at the North Peninsula Rec Center for youth as well, which is great. We definitely need to get more out there for our kids to do. And it's great to see that we're moving kind of in a direction of being open and normal again. And I just want to thank everybody for their continued hard work. I think everybody's working hard at what they're doing. Continued thank you for your safety. I'd like to look forward to what we're doing moving forward in the future. We're getting back to that normal plan. Looking at the future for our kids. So the future of our kids and growing the city should definitely always be our focus. It's definitely my focus, leaving a better future for our kids. And I believe doing that is going to be through close relationships with our businesses and our small businesses as well. And part of building that relationship and building our economy to get through these tough times, we don't want to lose any of our businesses after 2020. We do have this Shop Local program that is coming forth. As we said, we have 335 businesses in Kenai that could really definitely benefit from this program. I have complete faith in the chamber and their ability to run a great program and it being successful in Kenai. I don't feel $100,000 is appropriate allocation for that. I would like council to consider moving that to $1 million. We swept back $1 million. We have $1 million free in our general fund that should have been put out to small business, and I would like to see this be $1 million program. We have a message that from Coy West. Our message is to promote Kenai as a place to relocate businesses and families. So if Kenai sends a strong message that we support our small businesses, our economy, and the future growth, we can do better with this program. I encourage council to look at this and what we can do for 335 businesses in our city. We could definitely run a great program through the chamber. It'll create relationships with the chamber within our business community. So I would like to encourage $1 million Shop Local program with the money that has not been allocated. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Askin.
I don't have any comments. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Vice Mayor Malloy.
Thank you. Yeah, we have another challenging year ahead of us. I'm looking forward to, working with my colleagues in the next year in administration. My colleagues' comments about children and what's happening in sports and everything makes me miss our student representative, that used to always bring that to our meetings, and hopefully we'll have some interest from the high school in a student representative to join us again. Thank you.
Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you. You mentioned fireworks earlier, and actually I'd gotten some emails as well. But I just wanted to put out there, if somebody on council is interested in a fireworks ordinance, Mr. Bloom has an ordinance that he and I spent a lot of time on, and he just has to brush off the dust. And as I recall, the ordinance primarily just allowed sale of fireworks in the city of Kenai in certain zones for the month of December, I believe. And the idea there was to allow people to just simply drive to Kenai. It would encourage business here in town, and also folks wouldn't have to make the long trip to Houston or whatever it is and back with their families in the middle of winter to do that. So at any rate, just putting that out there. I gave it a try a few years, 2017. Oh yeah, Jim.
I was a co-sponsor too.
You were a co-sponsor, yes. But any rate, yeah, if you want to do it. But anyway, it's there. So I just wanted to put that out, and somebody else can try it this time. I'll probably support it. Let's see. Today I got another text from some folks that are well over 65, actually trying to schedule a time to get their shot. They were having some difficulty, and it's that. It was a problem with them really in trying to work the computer in the website, and they actually had an error in that. So I got them all set up, and they were able to do it. And they said they were successful. So I heard earlier that maybe some were having difficulties and weren't successful, but these two were. And the other last thing on vaccinations, both of my daughters have received their first vaccination, and one of them will be getting her second one by Friday, I think. They're both in the medical field and in other states, and they just to pass on their word, they highly recommend it, and I certainly will be doing that once it's available to me. But I'm way down the line. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Naxton. Seeing no executive session or pending items before us, we are adjourned.